beads made of shells were of great value to the native peoples of eastern Canada. Not only were they difficult to make, but when woven into belts and sashes, created objects of beauty which could be worn and sometimes traded. Non-natives often mistook this kind of beadwork for a wampum belt, or Indian money as they call it, but in fact it was no such thing. A true wampum belt was made of beads, but the beads were woven into a specific pattern which symbolized a relationship, an alliance. A true wampum belt was a treaty and not money, and was not ever meant to be traded. Back in the 1600s, for example, the Iroquois Confederacy of Akwesasne Territory presented the Europeans with such a wampum belt to represent the condition in which they welcomed the newcomers to their land. That belt had two rows symbolizing two paths, or two vessels traveling down the same river. One, a birch bark canoe, was for our people, our ways, our customs, and our laws. The other, a ship, was for the white people, their ways, their customs, and their laws. The belt affirmed that both would travel down the same river together as brothers, but neither would ever try to steer the other's vessel. Well, here we are a few hundred years later, still struggling with that same challenge, but the goal remains the same. We would travel the same path, but each in our own way. The Mohawks of Akwesasne still live on the banks of the St. Lawrence River, as they did in the days of the two-row wampum belt, as they have done for over 1,200 years. They have prospered here, maintaining a balance with the land. But the impact of neighboring cultures and divergent ways of life is affecting that balance.
From my grandfather, great-grandfather, they tell me stories how they used to fish here, you know. Yeah, it was great. It's always been great. It's one of the most, well, beautiful rivers in the world, you know, St. Lawrence River. See, I ran a fishing camp here for 25 years. There were so many fishermen that wanted to get in here that they make their reservations 2 months ahead. 2 months ahead, yeah. I started losing it about 8 years ago, my people, you know. 5 years ago, they just quit. Nobody came anymore. Can't eat fish, or can't take them home, you know. General Motors tested that water. They hired me to take them out there and test 19 places and put the bottom soil in jars and mark them at 2 feet to about 30 feet. And one of the guys said, I'll send you a report. They came back the next year to test some more, and he gave me a report. He says, for 1,000 feet in front of it, the marine life is dead. The fish we caught were really sick, you know. They had ulcers, they had sores on the fish, and some of them were deformed. Like one-eye fish, and the head was deformed, or the body was deformed.
You have the PCBs from Reynolds Metals, Alcoa, and General Motors. You have mercury from Domtar and CIL that are resident in sediments in the river. Fluorides from Reynolds Metals and Alcoa, which drift across the border into Cornwall Island and affect cattle. In 1977, the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne had to tell its people that it could no longer consume fish products from the St. Lawrence River. So, for example, the recommendation now from the council is that no pregnant women, women of childbearing age, or children under the age of 15 consume any fish species from the St. Lawrence River.
It's probably excellent. So this is put out by actually a private firm.
As the contaminant issue grew, more and more we required data from all of the governments. And as you required data, you began to search out people to see who could do the scientific sampling. It was at this point that we found a person called Ward Stone. The first time we met him, we very bluntly were put to him whether we were going to like him or not.
Well, my first day here, when I was coming in, I was probably a bit nervous about the way people would accept me, because I just hadn't had any real dealings with Mohawks. And here I was, where I was the minority, and Mohawks obviously are the vast majority. So I was worried about how to talk to them, what they would say, what they would think of me, would they accept me being white, you know, and this kind of thing.
Throw out my data, put my data held up in the hearing.
When I first came here, everybody was not friendly. You talk to Chief Tom Porter, who's a good friend of mine now. He came in to see me and he said, Mr. Stone, he said, we have all kinds of people here come to Akwesasne. They anthropologists, they come to study us. And they tell us they're going to do this or that. They ask us questions, and then they go away and they get a doctorate or a master's or something, and we never hear them again, and more come. He said, what is your price? How much will it take for you to go away? 500,000, 1 million, what will it take? And I said, well, you can't buy me. I've come to study the pollution and see what's going on. And I said, besides, it looks like you're copying us a lot. I see you're wearing a baseball cap and driving a pickup truck, and I see a lot of white man stuff around here. So we had a few words there at the beginning that I was going to persist, and I did.
Well, we just met with the minister of the environment here as far as the native issues were concerned, and we've asked him about this budget. If you look at it from the Mohawk point of view, we've been here for 1,200 years. The people who come in to the reserve and get negative response usually come in with preconceived ideas. They come in with preconceived notions. They come in with policies that say this is the way you will do things. They don't ask how we would do things. And what happens is that automatically creates an antagonism. Now, what you find is that if the person comes in with an open mind and tends to work with us, we tend to end up being able to do far more things than was just sort of outlined on the paper that was necessary to do.
Yep.
And that way, we'll take a sample down there. So I think we'll go back down to that cove that you wanted to look at.
Yep, the cove,
okay.
And also I think I'd really like to hard look at that Reynolds.
Okay.
I'd like to see what's happened to Bifennel Brook.
There used to be many families involved in commercial fishing, and they've gone out of business almost entirely because, you know, the fish are not suitable for sale according to Canadian and U.S. standards, so it's knocked them out of that. It's also taken away things like mink that would have been trapped in the past. Those pelts are not available for sale. So it's really impacted all the way down to food supply for the families, which probably was the most important thing of all. Mothers here are saying, you're not going to go out in the river, catch fish, bring them home, feed them to our babies. If they're not good enough for the white people, they're not good enough for our babies.
It's millions of gallons a day, and it's coming from this damn thickener system over here. It also picks up some stuff from the surface runoff on the plant, and the plant grounds are so heavily contaminated with PCBs that every time it rains, it gets a good shot and runs it into that system.
Yeah.
I think we've identified now, you guys and the pathology unit, I think 6 different discharges of PCBs to the river right here from Reynolds Aluminum alone.
Well, that discharge point right here was also one of their main fluoride discharge parts. They were allowed to discharge something like 750 pounds of fluoride out of that, I think, a day into the river as well.
Still is. Look at the water here. Definitely want to grab a water sample in this. Probably got a surfactant here.
It's one of my goals to see that this place is cleaned up, the St. Lawrence River, the Racket River in particular, in this area, and that the pollutant flow is stopped or at least greatly limited, because obviously we have to shut all this off if the Mohawks are going to be able to once again utilize the fish and wildlife in that river as a food source. And they pretty much have to do that if they're going to be a traditional people here.
Let me swing out a little bit.
There's also the fact that they look at animals differently than we do. And they really are part of their culture, part of their way of life. And there are several thousand people here that belong to the turtle clan. And we find that the turtles here are sickened by the PCBs that are moving through the system. So that affects their very psyche to see a clan species like that impacted by the pollution.
Hey, guy, you be careful when you go up there.
Yeah, that algae's a little on the slippery side.
You don't want to stay in there too long.
Okay.
Almost looks like a urine sample.
Yeah.
Somebody's not too healthy myself. I bet you it leaches a lot of the metals out of the rock here. I came from an Indian reserve into the non-Indian world to go to university and study. And the non-Indian world gave me a technology. They gave me parts per million, and they gave me a vocabulary that allows me to describe in minute detail what the environment is. But when I go back to discuss with my grandfather about what the environment is, he talks to me about the spirit of the land. The spirit of the land is far greater than anything that I can really understand myself. And I've worked for a long period, and I will work for a long period to try to understand it. The spirituality of it gives me the feeling of what this land is. The sciences give me a descriptive power of what this land is. And I think that those outlooks are the real differences between the non-native and the native aspects. You can see there's no benthic organisms at all. Nothing
moving.
Nothing in that at all.
No. Every time we've gone in there and done even extensive work, we haven't found an aquatic insect or anything.
Not even
down
the tolerant ones like Capitella or any of those.
Not down there. Nope.
You know, and you can see here, it's just completely dead.
Yep. Whatever they got there, I guess they could bottle it as an insecticide.
I think so too.
Millions of gallons a day. Let's see if I can see that other discharge. Yeah, there it is. Where these stones are over here, all these boulders coming down, that's another PCB discharge down the hill right there. That's probably running underneath those rocks, because there's always...
The earth is my mother, and every organism that lives within this world are my sisters and brothers, and that we're all integrated into this family. We are not like the non-natives who have dominion over the earth, who are stewards of the earth. There probably will be some more health analysis now on the people of Akwesasne, as set up by National Health and Welfare. They're going to want to monitor 3 different reserves as indicators of Great Lakes health. And they're going to try to use Walpole Island, Six Nations, and Akwesasne as being the 3 reserves. Wow. But it's a different process. They finally understand that they just can't send in 35 health nurses in here and you drain the blood out of 20,000 people, and then everybody disappears into Ottawa and they don't tell you anything.
Right.
So, in 1976, on environmental issues, the council decided to take a more active role in looking at the scientific projects in the river. And so what happened was that the 3 governments banded together into a thing called the Environmental Task Force. Sitting on that task force is made up of people from the community. There are outside organizations like American Friends Services. Rutgers University usually sits there. Cornell University. Plus the technicians who actually deal with the scientific problems on the reservation. And then usually a chief from each of the 3 councils would sit on that task force. Says, what in the
That's
world?
where they're coming from.
When, for example, non-natives attend meetings with us, we try to not swing strictly into our own way of negotiating things. We try to make some acquisition or some acquaintance with them. You know, the introductions, the respect for the person that's there. But what I would suggest to that person is that they be very patient. They listen very carefully, because the subjects will jump around. And then to give their honest opinion. Far too often, people that come into the community depend upon policy and try to rely on that. You know, the task force is set up under those three governments. The people that sit at this table are the ones that are responsible for, you know, not only their government stuff. The publics that sit at our table, we're glad to have them here, they can yell at us and tell us which Mark never fails to do. You know, consensus form of discussion and coming to agreement is something that the Mohawk people are known for, the Haudenosaunee people are known for. We've had the United Nations come here, we've had the Quaker groups come to learn from us how we develop consensus. Consensus is developed with everybody having as much information about the issue as possible, and then assuming responsibility for their decisions. It takes a long time, it's a long process, but it gets away from you know, the majority telling the minority what it always has to do. We believe that every person has the right in order to speak to an issue. So this means women, children, adults, elders, everybody has that right to speak to the decision, especially within a community.
The feasibility study is in a draft stage. It's possible that the feasibility study can be finalized by this winter.
There's a standard problem that, or a standard mistake that everybody makes, is that they'll go into a meeting, the chiefs will be introduced and solemnly introduced, and all of a sudden the people who are talking at the meeting are not the chiefs. The technicians will be talking, and everybody else except the chiefs will be talking. And the person gets very confused because they expect to turn to the chief and for him to give the, you know, the final ruling. Well, remember that a chief is not a ruler in the Native community. He's a spokesman. But now they're starting to say, the other one is the problem with silence. Is that in normal Western world, every inch of a conversation must be covered. There must be something said every second. Among Native people, that's not so. So you can have silence in a meeting. And during that silence, people think and think about what's going on. One of the ones that happens at the task force all the time is that, as you could see this morning, the agenda was produced. And of course, everything is prioritized on the agenda, or people think it's prioritized on the agenda. You know, number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like a good organized meeting on the outside. But it becomes very obvious as you go through the agenda that everybody's jumping all over the place. And I found that, for example, one of the people from the Quakers sat there and just in complete bewilderment.
See, I'd like to do number 3, actually. That's
Okay.
my favorite number.
Okay, then we'll move this to, we'll take it down to 6 with fundraising, all right?
Well, no, go to number 3.
5 and 6.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, go to, move,
Well, yeah,
keep,
move all that stuff now, number 6, and we'll go to number 3 now.
because we know we'll be in complete harmony for all of these things, number 6 and number 5. We tend to laugh a lot. The concept of the stoic Indian, you know, sitting there never saying anything, you know, and I can understand where that came from. We never knew what you were talking about anyways. Now we do. And when you go to our meetings, you'll find that humor is a way that we interrelate with ourselves all the time. That you will find background levels. There is no person in the world right now that doesn't have PCBs in their body. Nobody.
Mm-hmm.
You. With you this big and like that and eat that much fish, you can't even burn.
And be legal.
That's good.
Wait,
I'm throwing these stones over there.
And as you begin to know the community, know the people you're working with, you know, funny things will happen, and it's not unusual to laugh at them. I think some of the funniest ones I've ever seen has been with the press here, in which, for example, on one of the fluoride issues, we have an old gentleman who used to walk down the road and came along with his cane, and he was mobbed by like about 30 or 40 cameras from various big organizations wanting to get what you could call local color into the situation. So they stuck their cameras into his face and were filming him, and really intent. Somebody asked him, "And you, sir, how do you think the fluoride's affecting your teeth?" And he looked down and he went, "Not affecting him at all." And he put his teeth back into his mouth.
Well, this trout was found floundering around at the surface of the pond, and we netted it. And I noticed that we've got some gross pathology here right off the bat. We've got some sort of a lesion right here on the side that needs to be looked at. Look at a nice trout.
It's a beautiful trout.
Preconceptions that many people have about natives is that they really have no education. You know, they're drunks, they're lazy, all of them are on welfare, you know, and these type of problems. The people you don't see, however, are the people who are the good people on the reserves that are working to make a living.
PCBs here a week or two ago. Right. Did the same thing on Reynolds.
I myself, having gone to Trent University in Peterborough and University of Waikato in New Zealand to do research work at those universities, came back to this reserve to actually start the environmental division and to get this work underway. When I approached Indian Affairs, for example, on some data on mercury levels, I got one page in the mail that talked about mercury levels. And when I asked the person at Indian Affairs who had sent this to me, why didn't I get the whole report, his comment was that he didn't think I'd understand it. Okay, now we've got a couple scales off this fish. We'll take a look at her under the microscope here. When I first came to Akwesasne and started working at Akwesasne on environmental issues, there were only something like 9 native biologists in all of Canada. And only 1 or 2 of those were working on Indian reserves. Maybe 3.5 major rings. Nowadays, here at Akwesasne, we have 3 biologists working. You know, we're starting to have more and more of our own native people moving into those fields. This place is not full of drunken people or on drugs or people who are depressed. They're generally nice people, as they are most anywhere that you go. They're interested in their culture, their families, their way of life. They don't really want to harm anybody else in the world. They live in harmony with their environment. And so if you come with an open mind and you have skills and can blend in with the people, you're not going to have any problems and you're going to do very well. It's a lot of work to be done, though. It's like fighting the pollution here. You're fighting very large corporations and an entrenched bureaucracy that to some degree backs up the pollution.
There's a lot of meat in here, and this is great protein for people at Akwesasne or anywhere, really. This is our diet.
You couldn't have the idea that you were going to come in here for 2 weeks in the summer or a summer vacation or a few days or even a year and make a significant change, probably, in the amount of pollution here. And a lot of the problems are that type. They take a pretty long-term commitment. And mine so far has been 5 years, and I can see that it's going to take at least a few years more. And I intend to do that because we've made this much progress. You can see that we're going to win on the pollution issue if we keep it up. One of the greatest honors that a non-native can be given by the Mohawk people is to be named. And Ward Stone has been named by the Mohawk people. He's been extended that honor as a brother because of his work with the environment here and his commitment to try to understand the processes that we use.
Actually, like putting him right there by Reynolds.
Well, I was given the name Luhun Johali, which means he who washes the land, which I believe is as close as you can come in Mohawk to he who cleans up pollution. So it's a great honor to have that. I've been given a number of awards by the Mohawk Nation, and that's it's very important to me that we see this through to completion here, the cleaning up of the river. We already have got the water testing done from this summer, and we found that all those pipes coming down there from Reynolds, they're still putting lots of PCBs into the river, a lot.
They still are?
They still are right now. The big cement one, you know, the big sluiceway,
A lot of PCBs coming down through there.
Well, the strongest person that came along was Ward Stone. And we took samples of water samples first and weeds and stuff that's growing around the plant. And sometimes the General Motors engineers or security trying to chase us off, but we stayed. We stayed. Yeah. Ward, he wouldn't back down from any of the officials there. Yeah. So was Henry. He wouldn't back down.
Again, you know, $100 million to $150 or $100 million cleanup is, you could drop that in that really quickly in that place, especially when you start talking about groundwater cleanups or even the sediment cleanups. You know,
I've been studying turtles and finding them heavily contaminated. And when you see the turtle clan, and you also consider that in the Mohawk Genesis, the earth was formed on the back of a giant turtle. That's why they call North America Turtle Island. When you see turtles sickened by pollution, symbolically at least, it may indicate that the very underpinnings of the earth are coming apart.
It's all polluted, you know. And I got 14 grandchildren. They all love to fish. So we go out and catch fish and let them loose. Yeah, my grandchildren. We catch fish and let them loose. But they still want to go fishing, and they know now. You know, I said, I'll fillet that fish. We eat it. They said, oh no, we're not eating that fish. They're small as they are. They know that it's bad. It's sad, you know.
I don't think that there's anyone in the world that can say that they would really want the environment destroyed. I don't think that there's anyone in the world that says that their family isn't important to them. I don't think that there's anyone in the world that can exist without other people to help them and to take care of them. And so basically when you look at those emotions, the caring aspects of the native people and the caring aspects of the non-native, I think they're much the same.
When you're out in the woods at night, you build a fire and sit around with your elders in a circle of warmth. But for our people, the circle represents more than just warmth. It stands for harmony and life and friendship. The circle is a source of wisdom and understanding. And if the elders feel that you are ready, they will share that wisdom with you. They'll tell you their stories. Now, you may have some questions about what they say, but they won't tell you everything. They don't want you to take shortcuts and act like you know it all. They want you to find your own answers to your own questions. This is the Stein Valley in British Columbia. For thousands of years, it has been a center of culture, spirituality, harvest, and belonging for the Endlaka'an and Xw'tlin people. If plans to log it are allowed to continue, it will be lost. Also lost would be the Stein Rediscovery Program. Rediscovery gives youths of all races a chance to spend time in the valley with elders like Rose Tate. Together, they learn about the land and about each other.
This is the beginning of the Stein. And what I always say to myself ever since I used to come in here is when you come right here, you seem to shut the door on society on this side. And when you go down there, this trail, it's just like a different world, you know. As you go further on, the quietness seems to get you, you know. It's so as if you were by yourself. You cannot begin to even think of the past, your past that belongs in the city and things like that. You're completely with nature. The stein has always been important to me, but other people don't seem to find it that way. Young people in the old days used to go in there, and they used to dance, they used to sing, and get what you call the spirit dream. That gives them the power. That spirit dream looks after them so that they can look after their own people. This here is it grows practically all over, down in the Fraser River banks. You've seen them there, haven't you? And they have kind of a purple fruit on it.
You do anything with the berries?
Yes, you can make jam from the berries.
The essence of rediscovery is the circle and the respect, love, and harmony that people established by coming together and facing challenges and doing day-to-day basic living.
This tree is called a birch in English. And you could make baskets out of that, you know, or you could, in the spring, you could cut.
Non-native should approach a native community, again, with respect, because it's two cultures and we all have different backgrounds. So there is a clash there, but I think as long as the willingness to talk about it is there and just genuinely using their heart to deal with the people, because that was one of the things that I really appreciated when I came to Lytton, was how warm and loving the people were to me. It didn't seem foreign, it seemed like I'd come home, because the elders were just really real people, not pretentious and not judgmental, but just really willing to spend time with anyone that treated them with the respect that they deserved.
If it wasn't for the elders, we wouldn't have the teachings that they've been passing on to us because of this children's camp that we have in the Stein Valley. Because the elders are part of what's happening with the rediscovery program. What happens in the Stein Valley with the rediscovery program is an exchange of ideas so that the kids can understand one another, whether they be Shema kids or our kids. They go in there and they come out with a different outlook on life. And that's really important, because if we're going to teach our kids something that some of us have lost because of residential schools, at least we're bringing it back to some of the younger people so that we know that our tribe and our language and our traditions and our cultures will survive. I'm going to give an attempt in speaking in Tagamach so that the elders can understand what we're talking about. If I make any mistakes in my language, please understand that I'm not as well versed as my elders.
There's many of us here that don't know how to speak the language. And before I went to school, my grandmother told me, as you go into school and you learn the ABC and the counting, you know, you got to count your money if you're going to go into the white man's world. I says, but don't forget your Indian language. It is important because that identifies us as Indian, first of all. That identifies us, because we surely can't be forever English speaking. We can't do that because we got our own language. Like I just told you, We got our own ways of praying, our own religion, which isn't wrong.
Rediscovery teaches kids self-worth. It also gives us a chance to share with the non-natives our culture. And by doing that, it opens their eyes to what we really are, not what some school book tells them, or what their parents may have told them. Rediscovery was started in 1986. For some people, it was a way to prevent any type of logging activity to go into the valley itself. For others, it was other reasons, like getting to know themselves, to discover their strong points and weak points in society.
4 years ago, we had our first annual dinner and we had a rock band, and that was good. People got together. The next year we had a powwow, and there were very few dancers, and we had to really dig up drum groups to come. And there weren't very many local dancers. I think there were 4 boys at that time. And now, 3 years since that, you know, the hall's almost overflowing. Putting value in those kind of things is part of Rediscovery's effect in the community, I think. And I see that the circle of those people is growing every year. That because we are treating each other with respect and trying to understand our differences and treasure the differences, not try to mesh them together, but see the differences and respect them, that we're becoming stronger. Michelle's really a quiet girl, and she was one of the first girls to do the dancing. And I'm not sure, I guess I don't want to speak for Michelle, but my opinion is that it's not meditation, but it gives her a point where she feels centered and she knows what she is. And it's something she's been able to share with other girls, and it's given her strength in that, you know, she can help other girls learn how to do it.
You know, Michelle, when I first come through here, when I first come into the side, I was only 4 years old. And my mom and I, we were in a place similar to this. Like, for instance, she was standing there, you know, fishing. And here I am, I'm playing over here, you know. And I don't know what happened, you know, as a child, you're moving around. And all of a sudden, I found myself in the water. And my mom just reached down and she grabbed me. I used to have pigtails. And she grabbed me and pulled me out. And she was so mad at me, she put me over her knee and gave me a good wallop, you know. Well, that's the last time I was crazy like that.
Water must have been cold.
Yeah, it was. They just walk. Oh, this thing is moving too. Yeah, what if it moved right in the middle?
Having elders in camp is good for 2 reasons. It's good because elders sometimes don't have any value in society. They're past retirement in sort of a work sense, and they're isolated. They have really good listening skills, and they have a lot of neat experiences to share with kids. And just being in the Stein brings back a lot of memories that maybe they haven't thought about for a long time.
This here is terrible. Oh, let me hold on to this.
Some of the elders have talked about talking to a tree or talking to the rocks, and kids have really thought that was crazy at the beginning, but by the end of the session they realize that, because they talk about it and they realize that the life force is through everything. The life force just isn't you and me, it's all the animals and all the plants, and the life force is really important to protect, and that's why the Native people are here.
If they log that back there, and the little animals that are on the ground, live in the ground, what are they going to do when the road goes in there and destroys their homes? And the fish, what's going to happen to it? Because all the spawning grounds are going to be spoiled from the debris that comes from the road making. It's going to eventually end up in the creek. This here is what you call asking rock. These paintings have been here for thousands of years, before the white man came. That's been there. Now don't ask me what the paint is made of, because I don't know. That died with the old ones. That there is history. You know, like the white children and they go to school and they learn, you know, history from books. But imagine this Indian history is written in the rocks. It's hard to imagine. And yet if something ever happens, they'll destroy this forever. As long as those rocks can survive, that culture will survive. And that belongs to the both of you, so that you two could understand each other, and the generations ahead of us will understand each other and become just like one. So that we're not only interested in breaking things, destroy this, destroy that for the sake of the money. That's why those rocks are there now. And, you know, to see those rocks there with the painting, you always remember the strength it gives you. If that painting could survive these many years, many thousands of years, you can imagine how much strength they used to. When you go right here, and this is the asking rock, you ask for strength.
I've never seen the Stein before, but I mean, I've been at places before, but never anything that nice. I mean, I couldn't believe it. It's just totally natural. It's still, like, it's still whole, you know, there's no road there, you know. The way that loggers and people like that think of it is, you know, how many trees, how much money per tree, you know, and they look at a tree, they think, oh, that's worth so much money, you know. They don't think, oh, what a nice tree. But it's also, I think that it's really important, really, to the Indian bands, and it's a sacred valley. I know that when I went into the Stein, I had a totally different spiritualness. I got a totally different spiritualness. I mean, I got more hopeful about the world. One little valley is really important to the whole world.
Between white and Indian, there must be a time when we must understand each other more about the forests and the rivers and things like that. We must fight so that they can be purified again the way they used to be. To save such things like this. Otherwise, it's going to be gone forever if we don't start, all of us here, if we don't start saying something. Use your mouth, your mind, everything to fight for such places. If you have to use your fist to make them listen, go like this on a table and make them listen. Because if you don't say nothing and just use your ears, you don't get anywhere. You've got to talk. Use your mouth and talk. That's why the circle is here. That's why even somewhere in there, the old ones say there's wisdom. You've got to use that wisdom to think what is best for you, for you, for you. I can live in the Indian way, and I can live in the white way. To go into the Stein like Joshua's been doing with the children, they will begin to understand each other. The Indian will understand the white, and the white will understand the Indian. Because that's one of the things that should be done more all across Canada, so that the next generations can begin to understand each other. Live together.